Heyo everybody, Haku here with my review of the One Piece anime episode 700 and what was it? 733. And we didn't have one last week. I think it was last week it was canceled, and we had it this weekend, and I think I may piss off some of you that liked it, but honestly, a lot of people said it was underwhelming, and I completely agree. I would even go as far as to say it's disappointing. It's very lazy, and I think the part of it that bothers me the most is that we've been in Dressrosa for what, like 2 years now in like real time, in like real lifetime watching this. We've sat through 2 years of Dressrosa, and this is the finale. This is the big ending. This is what we've spent those 2 years building up to, and this is what they give us. This was so shoddily made and half-assed. The story itself, not bad, but the production was terrible. And I would not be quite as hard on it, as hard on this production, if it wasn't the big finale of Dressrosa. It was just so underwhelming, so disappointing. It was bad in a lot of ways. It had a lot of good too, and I'm going to go over both the good and the bad. But overall, looking at it in a general sense, this was very not good. This was not at all. And you can say, okay, it was good for Toei standards, but that's like saying, okay, I'm tall for third grade standards. If you're tall for third grade standards, you still could probably not be very tall. If you're good by Toei, if you say something, oh, it's good by Toei standards, that's not a defense, because it can still be pretty bad. So at first I was watching through and taking notes. I always take notes while I'm watching through, and I'm like, okay, this recap is going by pretty quick, and they're doing good at the recap. And then we got to the Rebecca and Viola stuff, and like I said, last episode, or the episode before that even, maybe, it was terrible, and seeing it again was pretty bad because it was so badly animated. And even in the manga, Viola and Rebecca are pretty boring, useless characters, but the anime, the way it's paced so slowly, and I know it has to do that in some parts, but some parts in Dressrosa have overdone bad pacing. They didn't need to pace it this badly. They could have done things that remedied that. And another excuse is, oh, the budget. One Piece is a huge thing. It doesn't, of course, nothing has the budget to put out an amazing looking episode every week. But when something is at a point where it's just lazy, you can't blame the budget any longer. So yeah, I think that the anime took the sort of boring and useless characters of Rebecca and Viola and just made them a million times worse because of the pacing. And it's like they forgot to animate mouths moving, and I know I called it out last episode, but again, this episode, it freaking, it was in there, so I'm going to point it out again. They forgot to animate mouths moving, but they do remember to throw some boob jiggle in there, some crazy boob jiggle that doesn't even make sense with physics. But whatever. Moving on, I've spent 4 minutes and haven't even made it past the recap. So at the very beginning, it looked nice. It looked really nice. The music was freaking epic, and it really built up my hopes for this episode because Luffy and Doflamingo looked like beasts, and the little back and forths looked so they were hyped. They were built up, and they built up well. Honestly, I thought that Doflamingo's string attacks here were the absolute best they've been animated the entire arc. They looked a lot better than they had in the earlier episodes. But then they throw in these still frames. And not short still frames where I'm like, okay, it made sense. He's just talking for a quick second and we get a still frame real quick. They had still frames that were there for just multiple seconds, spanning almost entire lines of conversation, lines of dialogue. It was noticeable still frames. You might as well have been watching a visual novel. It was just still frames, and it was so bad. It was so disappointing, especially on a big episode. And even if you could argue budget was a problem, wouldn't they have saved up their budget for the freaking finale of a 2-year arc? It's ridiculous how lazy this was made. So I thought during that fight, it looked really cool when Dofi pierced Luffy's haki, and that entire part leading up to when Dofi smashes him into the wall was really well animated. It looked really nice, and it made Doflamingo look really imposing, and I think that was good to make him look very imposing. Like, it made you think, okay, how's Luffy going to actually defeat him? This dude is still going tough. He's still strong, and Luffy is out of energy, essentially. What are we going to do? That was good. That was really good. But this is one of those episodes where the few really good parts can't like outweigh the minutes and minutes of nothing between them. Getting into Luffy's transformation sequence, not even bringing up the birdcage stuff that much, because there wasn't much of it, and it wasn't really that bad up until one point that I'm going to bring it up. It wasn't really that bad. I didn't mind it. So we have Luffy going into his transformation sequence, and I'm on the fence about that, because a lot of people are complaining because it was reused, and yes, that is very, very lazy, but it did look nice, and it wasn't one of those things where it was out of place. He was transforming in essentially the same way he was before, so reusing that animation wasn't the worst thing they could have done, but it was noticeably lazy. And that's the bad parts in this, are the noticeably lazy parts, and we really haven't even gotten into them yet. The ending is what, like, everyone's been waiting for, what you should be able to use to defend it. Like, oh, it was a slow or lazy build-up, but it got us to the good ending. But no, the ending had the most mistakes, and I'm going to call them mistakes because even though they meant to do it, it wasn't something that they should have done. And I think from what I've seen, they have a lot of angry fans. Pretty much, I'd say at least 90% of the comments I've seen very much disliked or hated this episode, and were very angry at Toei for putting out something so lazy and shoddy. After the transformation, when we're supposed to be getting this big, epic final clash, we had still screens, and still screens for multiple seconds, very long still screens, and we had multiple still screens. It wasn't just one. It was like, again, we could have been watching we could have been reading a visual novel. Like, it was so bad, it was so lazy. There was no effort, no heart put into this. And you know, from my anime reviews and stuff, that's what I like, when you can tell a studio, especially like, look at One Punch Man, I reviewed that. It just, that you could tell that the studio, even though the budget was kind of big, it wasn't very huge, at least not compared to other anime, and they put out something that's one of the highest quality animes, the way it was made, because you could tell they really enjoyed what they were doing. They really put the small details into it. And here is the exact opposite. You can tell that they're just cutting all the corners they can. They just don't care about what they're making, and it's so glaringly noticeable that it ruins it. Like, One Piece's anime used to be so good. Like, I love anime because anime can expound upon the manga. It can bring it more detailed. It can do stuff to it that makes it more entertaining and better for a broader audience. But when the anime is actually worse than the manga, when the anime is taking what's already there and doing it worse than it was originally done, it's just lazy. It's just, there's no real content that the anime is adding here. The One Piece anime used to be so great, and now it's just Dressrosa shows, because Dressrosa is a good arc, and yet everybody hates it and says it's dragging on so long. And I think that's because the anime it was dragged out in the manga, but the anime is making it even worse. And of course you need to pace things slowly a bit, but they're overdoing the pacing things slowly. They're overdoing the lazy stuff, like bad animation and still screens and reused animations. And in an episode like this, where it is the finale, of this storyline, essentially, we see that Doflamingo is pretty much defeated at the end. There's no excuse for still frames, reused animation, and really just horrid things like that. Things that will ruin an episode of anime. Now we get these flashbacks to earlier in the arc at one point during this final clash, and you know what? Normally flashbacks, and One Piece used to do it great. I used to absolutely love One Piece flashbacks. They would make it so emotional, they'd pair the right music, they'd show it from the right angles, show the right clips, but now it's just, they're just playing scenes from previous episodes with a filter over them and music that doesn't really match. And they've done this multiple times in the past few episodes even, where they just show scenes that we've already seen with a filter over them, like, okay, we need to pad this out for a little bit of time, let's just reuse this scene, put a filter over it, it's cool. And it's not cool. It's really destroying the integrity of the anime. It's not good, and I'm very disappointed in Toei for this. I'm very disappointed in the One Piece anime for this, because I'm such a huge fan. Oh, and that's another argument I keep seeing, which is retarded. It's one of the stupidest arguments ever, where people are like, oh, these people hating on it just aren't true fans. No, that's the dumbest argument ever. If you're a true fan, you should want something to be good. You should want what you like to get the proper respect it deserves. And it's obvious from what I'm seeing in the comments, everybody is so angry at Toei because Toei is not respecting One Piece. Toei is not giving it what it deserves whatsoever. It's really bad. And I know this is kind of turning into a rant more than a review, but this episode is those problems. This episode is essentially like nearly all just problems. They're problems that have been persisting, but they're all lumping together in one episode, and it's not good. And honestly, this isn't the worst episode by far. It's not as bad as the Sabo and Jesus Burgess episode. It's not as bad as, what was it, last episode that I gave like a 2 out of 10. I'd love to give all of these 10 out of 10s, but it's so irritating that this is being done, so badly, that a decent series, it could be done all right. Like, they could still keep going at the same pace they're going, but they could do it better. They could still have, like, not the highest quality animation, but they could do it better. And the only reason it's like this is out of purely just being lazy and not respecting the series. Toei just doing it for the money, to own the rights to One Piece, to make the series, and they're not really doing it right or adding anything to it at this point. Now see, I think if we show the scene with the final impact, if we show that and we cut out all the parts of Luffy's allies and the citizens, that'll be a great scene, or it could have been a great scene. But instead, we spent 3 entire minutes of the citizens and his allies just going, Luffy? And it just, it ruined. If there was any sort of hype, it ruined it. There was no hype left. There was, like, if you would have watched my live reaction, I'd be like, oh, this hype, oh wait, never mind. No, it's not. The hype is completely ruined. All the tension is broken. There's nothing left. It wasn't emotional. It didn't give you that building feeling. Like, I think I know what they were trying for, because there are these moments where the good guy's defeating the bad guy, and you see all the other characters like, yes, this is happening, and it's really emotional, and it's really so great. Like when Luffy took down Rob Lucci, a fight that was 90 million times better than this fight, and I absolutely love Doflamingo, and I love this fight, but the anime ruined it. The anime did this fight so terribly, so lazy. Just, that's my issue with it, is that it's just lazy. They didn't care. So I'm going to say that there were some good moments, but the good moments were all completely ruined by cutting in with bad moments. When Luffy and Doflamingo were fighting, they interrupted us with still screens. When the final impact was going on, they interrupted us with 3 minutes of screaming and random people saying Luffy. Like, all of the good moments were completely ruined, but there were those few good moments. And honestly, even though I went so hard on this and I ranted so much, I'm not even going to give it that bad a score for me. I'm going to give it a pretty good score, because though it had all these problems, it wasn't the worst thing ever. It wasn't nearly as bad as the Sabo or Jesus Burgess episode. It especially wasn't nearly as bad as last episode. So in the end, I'm going to give it 6.5. 6.5 is fair. 6.5 spider webs out of 10. Because the good parts were good. And I think if you cut out these terrible parts, if you cut this episode down to like an 8-minute episode, by cutting out all this terrible, unnecessary, just hype ruining filler, then it would have been great. It could have been a great episode. And even leaving that stuff in, if they had put effort into making that stuff good, then it could have been good with that stuff. But they put no effort in. It was completely lazy and insulting to One Piece, I feel. This was an episode that was an insult to the series. One good thing, I'll end on a good note. One good thing I can say for this episode is that it did have really good music, and the sound effects were pretty good as well. So the audio was pretty good on this one, I'd say. That's one of the only good things I can point out about this, because it was very lazy, terribly lazy. I thank you all for sitting through that rant. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like if you did like it, and understand that we can have differing opinions. You can very much differ on these things from me, and that's just the way that things work. Different people see and value different things in things that they enjoy. And I do very much enjoy One Piece, but I think this episode was an insult to One Piece. Subscribe if you do want more One Piece content, Tower of God, and The Walking Dead, because I do at least 3 or 4 videos on each every single week. Comment down there, tell me what you thought of my thoughts and what you thought of the episode. I'm sure there may be some that agree with me and some that disagree for sure. I think that's about it, really. Follow on Twitter for updates on when I'm posting a new video, or if I need to push any videos back. And I think that's about it. I will see you all next time.